Hi everyone, my name is Emily Greene from the agency Stella Rising, and welcome to this episode of Crawl Error. Today we're going to cover how to leverage internal site search insights for your SEO strategy and beyond. So we'll break this into three parts. First, looking at the importance of internal site search. What is it and why does it matter? Secondly, we'll look at how to create the data set. And thirdly, we will look at how to interpret that data and make sense of what you're seeing. So first things first, what is internal site search? It is whenever a user executes a query on your website, and optimizing it is the process of enhancing those search results to make sure that you are delivering the best user experience when someone executes a query on your site. So the purpose of this audit is to discover and resolve the most common successful and failed search queries in order to optimize user experience, locate content gaps, and extract site structure insights. So why are people turning to internal site search? What is their experience once they get there? And how can we present our navigation in a way that they can discover the content that they're looking for without having to turn to internal site search? So why is it so important? Well, for e-commerce sites, you have two types of visitors. You have your browsers and your searchers. So the browsers are midway through the purchasing funnel. They only have a vague idea of what they'd like to buy. Maybe they think they might want a new shirt. Versus searchers are toward the end of the funnel. They're looking for something specific. They want a certain floral shirt or a certain red shirt, and they are determined to get it. So as you can see, that browser is just kind of perusing your website versus the searcher is determined to find that item. And if they can't get it from your site, they might turn to a competitor. So when we actually look at the data, we see that performing an on-site search is a strong behavioral predictor of intent to convert. So in this instance, for users who executed a site search, the conversion rate was almost 5% versus users who did not execute a site search only converted at a rate of 1.67%. So we want to ensure that those searchers who are more valuable are being delivered the best results possible so we can retain them. So in order to create a meaningful data set, we recommend going above and beyond just a simple export of what you're seeing in Google Analytics. But that is where this process starts. So first things first, you'll go into your admin settings in Google Analytics and make sure that you've configured site search tracking. Pretty simple. You will just simply look at one of your site search URLs and figure out what is the query parameter. Typically, it'll be an S for search, a Q for query, a K for keyword, but it could be anything. You will then want to wait for a given period of time to make sure that you are collecting meaningful data, eliminate any seasonality that can happen with site search, and have data that works with your entire catalog. Once you've done that, you will go into GA again and look under behavior, site search, into the search terms report. We recommend looking at the search terms report over the search pages report because you ultimately can get higher quality data and better user insights from looking at the search terms. So essentially, all you need to do here is extend that date range as much as possible and export the list. You'll wind up with something that looks like this. You can see we have our search terms here, the total unique searches, and then several user experience metrics. How often are people exiting the site? How many pages do they look at? And what amount of time do they spend on the site after search? But this doesn't paint the full picture of what the user is seeing on any one of these web pages. So you will want to pull in the number of results that a user sees on a page to get a better sense of what their experience really is. Are they bouncing because they weren't delivered any results, or were they delivered too many results and they were overwhelmed? So in order to do this, you have to first convert the search terms to URLs so that you can later crawl them in Screaming Frog. So you'll do a simple Excel formula using your base URL, whatever your website name is, and a space placeholder. You can extract that from one of your site search URLs that you generated from executing one yourself, and plug that into this formula, and you will wind up with an output that looks something like this. That space placeholder should appear with any queries that have more than one word, and make sure your data set is looking good. Once you've done that, we recommend visiting one or two URLs, two or more URLs really, and looking for an element on the page that differentiates the number of results that are appearing. So for example, in this case, we can inspect this URL that says your search for makeup sets returned with 554 results. So that 554 is what we're looking for. You'll simply highlight that text, right click, and inspect the element. Once you've done that, the purpose of this is to create a custom extraction in Screaming Frog. So you will copy the selector here or copy the XPath. You'll then plug this into your Screaming Frog custom extraction under your configuration, and just make sure that everything is lining up. You can use extract inner HTML, you can use extract text. This will vary site by site based off of what that element is on the page that's differentiating the number of results. So once you've done that, you're going to crawl your site search URLs, the entire list, in list mode. And you are going to want to monitor that custom extraction report to make sure your data is coming in accurately. So perhaps there's variations in how the data is displayed, if there's no results on the page or if there's one result on the page. So make sure that every URL is populating an accurate search result number. Now that you've done this, you can then export your list of URLs from Screaming Frog with the custom extraction. You're also going to want to export the page title and the H1. Once you've done that, you will merge these data sets with just a simple VLOOKUP, and essentially you will pull in the number of results and the H1 and the title if it seems relevant. Once you've done that, you've got all your GA data, all your Screaming Frog data in one place, and you can begin analysis. But before you do that, make sure you admire the data, give yourself a pat on the back, because it is an arduous process with a lot of troubleshooting. So how do we interpret the data once we have it? The basic question is, what is a successful query and what is an unsuccessful query? So I think the first way to look at this is to basically break down the number of results that a given query has. So look at your results distribution. Are we serving users 0 results the majority of the time, 100+ results the majority of the time, or are we somewhere in between? And then you also have to think about what's appropriate for the size of our e-commerce website and our business, and also what's appropriate for that particular query. If someone is searching for purple mascara, should they be delivered 50 results, or should they be delivered just our 1 or 2 mascaras that we have in stock? So that'll be up to you how to define it, but you will want to consider that on a query by query basis. So once you have thought about that, you will look for common site search issues in your data. These are some common trends that we'll see. So typically there will be issues with your site search not recognizing alternate spellings of something, or not recognizing synonyms. So for example, a term like eyeshadow with or without the space might give you different results. That's something to look for. You'll want to look for modifiers creating broader results rather than refined results. So if we specify we want blue eyeshadow, do we get more results than if we just searched eyeshadow? That is something you'll want to keep an eye on. Mishandling of color variants. So how many results are showing up when we search blue versus how many results are showing up when we search cobalt, and what is the appropriate balance? And then lastly, you will look for high exit rates on any URLs, and often you'll find that this is happening for limited edition products or products that have gone out of stock. So we'll look at ways that you can handle that as well. So first things first, one of the most common issues are plurals and misspellings not being recognized as synonyms. So again, that eyeshadow example using the space, as you can see here, gave us drastically different results. If we searched eyeshadow, that exact match term only yielded one result versus eye space shadow gave us 48 results. So obviously there's a discrepancy here. That doesn't necessarily mean that the results, the 48 results that were coming up were high quality. So we're going to want to dive into that and see what exactly is happening. Ultimately, the concept though is just that you'll need to configure synonyms so that your algorithm, your site search algorithm recognizes a plural and a singular as the same item, and same thing with just what we consider acceptable misspellings. Next, modified results or modified searches. So say someone is looking for a certain variant that you don't have a lot of inventory for. So in this example, purple mascara, you don't want them to see your entire range of purple products and your entire range of mascaras. You only want them to see that isolated item, because if they have to go digging through the search results, you might lose them before they find the item that they're looking for. And again, these are our most valuable users. We want to make sure that they are getting the best results, putting the item basically directly in front of them. So pretty simple, but if there's a modifier in your query, the principle is that there should be fewer products that are considered relevant rather than more products. Typically, we see if you haven't configured this properly, more products will appear rather than fewer. Then shades and variants. So this is an area that is often indicative of a content gap on your site. So if we see a broad term coming up a lot in the search queries, we should dig into that. Why are we getting a lot of searches for red eyeshadow, glitter eyeshadow? Is this something that is addressed by our current navigation, or are we lacking something that our users are looking for? So essentially, look for trends with any kind of variant that's relevant to your business. Look for high search exit rates compared to the benchmark for your site, and then dig into that. Why is this happening, and what can we do to provide a better experience? So there's basically two ways to handle a broad shade search or a variant search. First of all, you should configure synonyms to deliver better results. So say someone is looking for a crimson eyeshadow, they should be delivered a crimson eyeshadow as we looked at in the prior example. But if they search for a red eyeshadow, they should also be served the crimson shade that you've designated. So ultimately, the goal here is to just make sure that we are using one directional synonyms so that anyone using a generic term will also see the specific result. And then the real question is there enough search volume here for us to justify making a new category page? You'll want to cross-reference this, of course, with external keyword data, but if we're seeing a significant trend and we think that we can capture users this way, look for ways to address that content gap and incorporate something like that into your main navigation. If you are to create landing pages from this, there are just a couple best practices. I would create a brand new category page and merchandise it exactly as you would any other, because generally these site search results pages aren't as high quality as those category pages that you can merchandise on your own terms. So generally we recommend de-indexing search results pages because they tend to be thin, duplicate, or excessive. In this example here, you can see for a term like lip pencil, if we were to make a search result page indexable across the board, we would be seeing a lot of duplicate content here and a lot of nonsensical pages that we don't want cluttering the index. That said, there can be opportunities where it does make sense to make a site search page indexable. Usually it has to do with your bandwidth. You don't have time to merchandise a new category, or you're trying to cast your net really wide. But for the most part, we do recommend de-indexing these. Obviously, you'll notice that Amazon and Etsy are often using this tactic of making their site search pages indexable. But you can also see that this might not be providing the best experience for users. We have their best sellers in mascara category appearing first, but then their best mascara site search page appearing duplicate underneath that content. Same thing with their just broad term mascara. And while this can be a successful tactic, I would consider just the authority of your website and whether or not this could work for you, because often a smaller website is not going to be able to get away with cluttering the index with these pages that aren't meaningful and basically waste your crawl budget. But back to interpreting our site search data, the last item to, or one of the other things to look for that commonly appears are high exit rates for limited edition products and out of stock products. So ultimately, what is typically happening is you've hidden this content or you've buried it at the bottom of your search result pages, which makes sense because you don't want to serve someone out of stock content. However, this is not really the best landing page experience for users, and you can fix this by implementing a 301 redirect to your target landing page and optimizing that to retain that user. So again, these are searchers, they know they want this limited edition product and you're going to be restocking it in a month. Let's collect their email address, or let's direct them to a very similar product that they might also be interested in. So you will basically implement a 301 redirect to that optimized landing page, and you'll want to make sure that that landing page has an estimated availability date, an option for users to sign up for email notifications or your newsletter, and then an optimized you may also like panel. This might be the most important thing depending on whether or not that item is coming back in stock. So as a summary of these, we have the solution that you can configure in your internal site search settings. This is obviously handled differently based off what platform you're using, but the general principle is clear. Whether or not you want to use one direction antonyms or one direction synonyms, or bidirectional. So these are all things you can configure in your site settings. For issues like out of stock products, again, really, this is one of the bigger opportunities to create a good landing page experience with a 301 redirect. And then for instances where you're seeing, high search volume for a generic query, consider whether or not that belongs in your site architecture, because there could be a great SEO opportunity there. And that is it. Thank you for listening. If you have any questions, please contact me. I'm Emily Greene, and my email is egreene@stellarising.com. Thanks for listening.